Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Ann Ganguza, and today I am very excited to have with me in the studio a very special guest, Senior Manager of Voiceover Operations of Studio Resonate, which is SiriusXM Media, Pandora, Stitcher, Steve Pogatch. In addition to producing thousands of high-quality audio ads in the past 10 plus years that he's been at Pandora, Steve has been the go-to guy for all things VO, casting, direction, and quality. He's responsible for recruiting, auditioning, and curating new talent for the Pandora VO roster, as well as managing that roster. Steve, I am so super excited to have you with us today. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. I feel like I've reached the upper echelon of the VO world now that I'm on the Boss podcast. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, we're super excited to glean all of your years of wisdom. And I'm just so excited that we had this opportunity, that I saw you in person. I had to see you in person to beg you to come on the show. So let's kick off things by talking a little bit about your journey at Pandora. You've been there for 10 years, and I know in the past 10 years in my voiceover career, I've seen a ton of things change. Talk to us a little bit about what you've seen as far as changes in audio advertising, casting, and in voiceover.
Sure. So yeah, about 10 years ago when I started, I was just a producer, and our voice roster was maybe about 60 talents or so.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was a lot of, I think when they started their advertising department, they were getting talents off of Craigslist and other places that I really didn't know. So when I got there, it was that roster was on an Excel spreadsheet, really. And, it was just, filled with all kinds of information. And it was really hard to manage and navigate. But a lot of the voices were that terrestrial radio, announcery style voice. And one thing, one overarching theme is that the voices and everything we've been doing for the past 10 plus years has really just escalated from the announcery, like, hey, Pandora listeners, radio style, to, hey, Pandora listener, it's like, instead of talking to a group of people, talking to one person, you're interrupting their music flow, you're tapping them on the shoulder, right. You're in their earbuds, and you just, hey, let me tell you about this Tide detergent, or, Cascade dishwashing liquid, or something like that, and just the gentle approach. So it's really gravitated from the super announcery terrestrial radio style to super conversational. Now, what a directional word I love to use nowadays is casual a lot.
Sure.
Because everyone's sick of conversational already. They're like, oh yeah, you're talking to a friend, blah blah blah.
You know what's so funny is I just, my own personal feelings about it is I get that, like, people are like, I think they're just sick of the conversational word. But in reality, we have conversations with each other every single day. And so there's all different styles of conversational. It could be authoritative conversational. It could be like super casual conversational. I think that, when it comes to advertising, though, one of the reasons why it's kind of gotten to that in your ear, one-on-one sort of, I think that's what sells, and I think that's the evolution of advertising over the years. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's, the more personal you can get or targeted with a, with an ad, or, not to the point where it's creepy, but, to the point where where it resonates with the listener,
right.
Where it's like,
right.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing with VO talent getting into a script and connecting with a script. It's like you want to connect with that listener, like, oh yeah, I do use that dish soap every night. Oh
sure,
yeah,
sure.
I want to, oh yeah, that sounds interesting to me,
So then I guess my question would be is, and this is probably something you're very familiar with, is that, they ask you to have that casual, like engaged sort of sound, but yet they don't always write it so that it's easy to achieve that. Do you find that in terms of the copy that you're seeing come across your desk over and over again? Like, people still want it to be very, like you're talking to your best friend, or that casual, but yet sometimes it's written like super announcery.
Yeah, and that is hard. That is really hard. When you get the bullet point style, our orange juice has 100% fresh pulp, and, made from only Valencia oranges. It's like, and there's 3 other facts attached to that, and you're squeezing that into squeezing like orange juice. You're squeezing that into a 30-second spot.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we get these bullet points to be super conversational?
Oh,
That is hard.
Yeah.
That is very hard for a talent and for a copywriter. So we do have some great copywriters on our team on Studio Resonate that actually really write great scripts. And whenever I can get scripts with humor in them or stuff like that, it just really makes the whole experience better.
Now, in the studio, are you always writing the copy, or do the clients come and provide copy as well? Or do you make suggestions, let's say, when they come with copy and then they ask for, a super casual read, or they have 5,000 words when they need it in, 30 seconds?
Yeah, that happens. The struggle is real.
The struggle is real.
Yeah, I'd say, I don't know the exact percentage, but from where I sit, I don't do the writing, but it feels like maybe half and half. Half are our copywriters and half might be the clients. And sometimes we'll actually take the clients and go, here, let us try and rewrite this in a Pandora-fied way or something like that, So yeah, it's, and sometimes again, it's like those bullet pointsy stuff that you really need to get in there. And don't even get me started on some pharmacy disclaimers and stuff like that. You probably know from medical narration and stuff like that. It's just like, woo, it's like 90 words in a 30-second script. Yeah.
But they're changing too. It's interesting if you actually listen, I mean, to some of them now, I don't think they're as fast as they used to be, because I'm almost positive that because it's a legal disclaimer that they have to be understood by the listener. And so sometimes if they're talking too fast, then it's not clear, or because I've really noticed that trend, and I don't know if it's the same in terms of, I've seen it on television at least.
Yeah.
I don't know about Pandora, but very, very, very interesting. So then my question is, is the casual read dying? Are people coming back to announcer style, or are you seeing variations on the type of casual?
Yeah, I hope it's not going back to announcery, because we've really worked hard on this whole, this whole gentle approach. Yeah, exactly. And personally, when I meet a voice actor who's locked into that whole radio world, I have 27 years of radio experience, how do I get on your roster? And I just kind of go, well, how do I let you down gently, because
exactly.
I mean,
for an actor.
some talents, and again, talents who haven't really evolved with us in the 10 years that I've been there, at least, or may not be on our roster anymore, because there has been that evolution. But yeah, it's really difficult for some people who have been locked into that radio world to actually shift and change, and it's part of their muscle memory. So it's
interesting. Yeah. I know that even when it comes to long format narration, I know that just reading it doesn't cut it anymore. I mean, you have to be in their ear, and that's super hard, given you've got more than a minute's worth of copy, and it's not always written, in a first person kind of way. So that, I know the struggle is real for that as well. So, in terms of advertising, would you say that, there are more advertisements, from 10 years ago today, or how are you seeing the trend? Because I know in podcasting, there's a lot of people who they find advertising annoying, and so they fast forward, quickly. And so I'm just curious to see how advertising is received in terms of listenership and in terms of popularity of people. Yeah, let's advertise on Pandora. Let's advertise it.
It's funny because when I first started this job, I would meet people at a party or something like that, or a dinner, a get together, and they were like, "Oh, where do you work?" I'm like, "Oh, I work at Pandora." They're like, "I love Pandora," and then I just sit back and wait for that next sentence, and they go, and then they take a breath and they go, "But the ads, yeah, exactly, you knew it." And then I go, "Hey, I make those ads." And then talk about an awkward, you can hear a glass drop in the background, but it's just Well, I'm like, we're trying to, to make these ads gentle and, and not as abrasive and in your face like real radio ads. And then they turn around and they start to agree with me and like, yeah, okay. I'm like, but I think the free Pandora, has really kind of survived on the advertising.
Yes.
And I don't, and I haven't really done a count in a while, but I don't think it's that many ads. I don't think it's really changed over time either, like in terms of an ad pod in an hour. Listening session.
I think it is what it is. I mean, you have to support the medium, and I know that for myself, like on the VO Boss podcast, I've had sponsors, which I wait until the end typically to say anything about the sponsors. But lately, I'm like, gosh, I've had this podcast for 7.5 years, and I've never done any advertising. And so now I'm kind of doing my own ads. And, in the beginning, now we'll see how that turns out. But my question to you is that podcast advertising is now really started to become a thing just because podcasts are now becoming a thing. So what are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing trends? Are you seeing, changes in how people tolerate ads in podcasts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing, and I actually am guilty of fast forwarding through a podcast ad recently when I was listening to a podcast. So
it better not be mine. No,
shame on me. But
that's like a voice actor who fast forwards through a commercial on television.
Right, and if it's their own, yeah, I know.
Oh, I don't watch commercials. Really? Like.
But since SiriusXM bought Stitcher a few years ago, they were a podcast company, so we had to kind of figure out, okay, we're going to do a lot more podcast ads now. So, what does this sound like? So I feel like in the past few years we've been kind of sculpting this. There's a couple different versions of what we work with in our group, on our team, and one is host reads. It's like you have your Conan O'Briens and they're just handed a sheet of bullet points and they're ad-libbing. And by the way, if you ever listen to...
And I think that's effective.
Yeah, if you ever listen to Conan O'Brien's ad reads, they're incredible.
Smartless. I'm going to put my vote in for Smartless.
Okay.
Really, really excellent. It's Sean Hayes, Justin Bateman, and oh my gosh, who else? Will Arnett. And so each one of them take turns. And you're right, they get the bullet points and they add them. They're amazing. They're funny.
That's the best.
Yeah, and so I agree. So that's just so interesting.
Yeah. So that's the host read, and then we also do this thing called announcer read. Now, that word announcer is not used in the same context that I just told you that we've evolved from. It's just, quote, announcer read. It's another package or whatever. So we've been trying to sculpt, what does this announcer read sound like? Well, in my eyes, it's like an offshoot of the conversational, because you're listening to a podcast and it's usually two hosts, or whoever the hosts are. They're just shooting the breeze, talking to one another. We've all heard that. And then boom, a podcast ad comes in. So how do we want that ad to be? And it's the same thing as interrupting someone's music flow. Again, but this is so we just want that super casual approach,
But you can still tell the difference because it's not necessarily ad-libbed, right? Like a host.
Right. Yeah, you can definitely, but we're trying to write that way as well, and we've been working on this for a couple years already, and I feel like we're getting there, and we have a select group of
I think I'm going to hire you guys. I wrote my own, and it took a long time because trying to write it as a host and in trying to write something to sell something without, I'm doing it myself, not bouncing it off anybody. And so it's a tough way to write. I mean, you have to, it's a whole different way of writing. Very interesting.
I actually, I produce a podcast for my wife and her sister, my sister-in-law. And my wife is a therapist and a coach, and she has products and, stuff like that. And she finally decided, I should advertise myself on there.
Sure.
So, and she's like, I said, go to Chat GPT and have them write some scripts for you and adjust
she
it.
Didn't ask you to write them.
No,
Steve, I think maybe
I already do too much. Producing this podcast is a lot more work than I expected.
Goodness, right?
But I said go and I said feed in your website or something like that so they know who you are. I'm I'm not super experienced with
I
it
did
yet,
have some
but
help with ChatGPT writing my own ads.
yeah, and she came up with 3, and I created 3 commercials for her. And now I put them in a rotation for her midway through her podcast. So it's cool. And then they also turn on ads wherever they're uploading their podcast to as well. So it'll be her ad, and then whatever ads they decide to put in there as well. So yeah,
well,
exactly.
Let's talk a little bit more about. Let's talk about when you're recruiting or trying to find new talent for your roster. What is the process, and what are you looking for? What sort of qualities in a voice actor are you looking for that are suitable for your roster? I know. Before it used to be a thing in the industry where it would be like, oh, they're opening up the roster, so everybody would be like, oh my God, did you get an invite or what? Was that kind of thing, or did you submit, and did you get asked to be on the roster? And it was a big thing when you weren't. I remember that. It was years ago. I submitted, and I just remember like going in the underground VO circles. It was the big thing.
Yeah, and I will say it's very, very hard. We have 260 talents on our roster, or 250 talents on our roster right now, and I'd say it's pretty jammed up. So it's like it's really hard to like find, what are we looking for now? I feel like every time someone applies or sends me something, the number one reason I have to tell people is, you kind of sound like 1 or 2 other people on our roster, and I feel bad. Like, you are a superstar, but I can't give the people on our roster a disservice, and I can't give you a disservice by oversaturating those kind of voices. So it's been tough to manage, and we don't open the roster at any particular time. I know at the end of the year I do a little house cleaning, so that people who aren't really who are maybe booking 1 or 2 jobs a year. It's like this. Let me tell you, that's the hardest thing about is saying goodbye to someone because they're not booking enough. Like, sorry, you have only booked like 2 gigs in the past 2 years. It's like, that's not sustainable for you as us being a client of yours. It's like, like, you're firing me. I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I don't want to use that word. No, but again, it's not sustainable for you to just book 1 spot a year from us, so.
Right. I agree. And I also think that it's hard for talent because they take it very personally when in fact sometimes it's not. I mean, sometimes yes, it may be performance related, correct? But myself, having been in casting and having done, VO Boss does an audition demolition, but in casting and for projects like that, I just know that sometimes it has nothing to do with the performance. It has everything to do with, I have this product and this voice is not the demographic that I'm looking for. And so a lot of it is based on, the client and what kind of voice they're looking for and who they're trying to sell to.
Right.
Is that similar to what you feel as well as to why some people get picked on the roster? Like, is there a trending sound right now, like millennial, like that kind of thing, or
no?
that you see?
There was the millennial thing, I think, but we've gotten everything we need right now. And I just like, what I really watch out for is oversaturating certain age ranges, and just like, okay, we already have some, senior aged males, only a couple. And then it's like, do I bring 1 more on? No, because, they're like, again, it's that oversaturation thing. So that's that's the most thing I have to watch out. That's the thing I have to watch out for the most these days.
So what can you say? What would you what would be your tips or secrets to help voice actors deliver their best performances? Let's not say, all right, not necessarily to get on the roster, but because you've been casting for years and casting talent and performances. So what would be your best tips for helping VO talent deliver a great performance?
Sure. I mean, I think, the number one thing in the way we deal with talents is we're not doing a lot of live sessions. We're booking, via email. So in those cases, you're going to have to send us 3 takes. And your confidence in your self-direction is really what's at play here. So I would say that's like the number one, kind of thing that we really hope you have is that confidence and self-direction, because you're going to send us 3 choices, and you can't be unsure. And you can't send us 3 of the exact same carbon copy. We've had some talents in the past.
How often does that happen?
It's happened where I actually have taken all 3 of their takes and put them on top of each other in Pro Tools or whatever, and it's just one thing echo, and there's no difference between any of them. It's almost like it's eerie. Yeah. So that's a no-do. But other stuff, definitely a good commercial reel. And I think from like listening to a ton of commercial reels, I'm starting to learn like what makes a good one these days, and also sitting on the speed dating with your demo panel the past few years at Sovas, I've had people give me demos that are like, sound effects heavy, and then there's another voice on there, and I say, you have 60 seconds. Add up the sound effects, add up the other voices on here. What's that? 4, 5, 6 seconds? Okay, that's 10% of your demo. That's not you.
Right. That's real estate.
Yeah, so you can have sound effects, but not have it just be by themselves, or start your demo with a big explosion or something like that.
Right.
Unless you're going for terrestrial radio or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, other stuff is like, one thing I really appreciate from a talent is I call it VO intuition. If you have a script that, for example, it says finance or something like that, and you're not sure the way the client wants it, it's finance or finance. And again, I want to write a book that has those words in VO, data, I wonder if anyone's done that yet, a book that all the words that could be said 2 different ways.
Oh, right.
So, and that there's my, $250,000 idea, I guess. I don't know. But, if you have a script like that and it's like 9:00 p.m. and the producer's not available, send it both ways and say, hey, I gave it to you. So that's what I call VO intuition. I really appreciate that when it's like, oh, I didn't know if you wanted data or data, so I'm giving it to you both ways, or I'm picking up this sentence, stuff like that is really great. But, it's not a requirement. Good communication. If I send you a request, I want you to hear back from you within, 3 or 4 hours. If you say, yes, I got it, I got you, I'm going to hit it by the deadline, no problem. Our turnarounds are like 24 to 48 hours, so we need that as well. So stuff like that. And, other stuff, definitely the commercial demo is number 1. It's not, these are nice to haves, character work, singing, but again, not required.
Got it. So, what qualities, in addition to, like, let's say the demo, right? Do you, let's say you have a demo and the demo is amazing, and then all of a sudden, do you find talent sometimes that don't equate to the demo? Meaning, what you hear on the demo is not necessarily what you get back when you give them, okay, here's a job the customer picked out for you. Can you give me, 3 versions of it? And then all of a sudden, it sounds nothing like their demo. And then, what happens at that point? Do you direct them, or?
Yeah, there is always a chance for us to get on the phone or do a live session, but in terms of our recruiting and the way it works to get on our roster is we listen to the demos, and if we really like it, then we'll reach out with a whole packet of auditions.
Oh, got it.
This is like 12 different scripts, from like automotive, university, healthcare, retail, and then we've just created a podcast script and CPG, which is consumer packaged goods, and a conversational script, and ad lib script. So it's like 12 of those scripts. So that gives us an idea of, did you record in a fancy studio and now you're at your kitchen table, or, are your recordings and what you did on your demo, is that also translating as well to our scripts? So
let's talk a little bit about, I always call it like the technological disruptor in the room, synthetic voices. Are you finding that you have clients that are looking for that these days? And if so, do you have a source, or how do you feel about it? What's your take on synthetic voices and their place in the industry today?
It's, I think there are some spots where it would be good for a talent, like if you had your clone and you were in control of it, I think that is number 1. And I want to shout out to Nava and everything they're doing for AI.
Agreed.
Because I believe in all the stuff, their manifesto, everything about, how they stand for the VO industry and AI. Just so into what they're doing. So I got a shout out for them. But there are places, suppose you were given something, where you needed to read 2,500 addresses or something like that, and you're just like, oh God, I can't do this. I'm going to blow out my voice, or it's going to take 6 hours, or, and then you're like, all right, I'll just do the body of the spot and then turn my clone on to do that. It's like, so again, but it's like, it's hard to figure out what are the rates, what is a good rate for that as well, and that's kind of stuff I think about, when I'm trying to go to sleep at night. What is a good rate? Now, I always want to stand for our talents and try and get the best rates possible for them. So, that's something I need to think about if we ever were to go into an AI world. Right now, I don't see some clients are asking for it and stuff like that, but it's not,
And what type of applications are they asking for it in terms of it's because they can't afford, or they have, let's say, volume material that they think, it's an ongoing thing where just a date will change or a price will change or a couple of, things will change.
Yeah, I don't think it's gotten that expressive yet, or that, what's the word I'm looking for, intrusive or that detailed yet, but I think they're just like wanting to to touch the new toys that are out there, play around in a way.
I actually almost I agree with you on that, because I feel like it's kind of novelty, and people just want to see how good it is. And I think for certain things, as you mentioned, and a big shout out to Nava, and one of the reasons why on the VO Boss podcast, and bosses, if you haven't listened to it, I did an extensive set of interviews with a number of AI companies, and to talk to them about ethics and the industry and synthetic voices in general. I got educated, really. I did a lot of work, and I got educated, and I think that's wonderful. And Nava is a really wonderful source for being educated as well. And so I think if we own the creative license and to our voices, and we can control it, I think that's moving in a positive direction. And we just need to get it there first, so that we can do that. But absolutely. But I don't think that the technology is there yet for emotion or rhythm or that kind of thing. Although there's lots of great examples out there. And the scary thing about some of the great examples is somebody will say, "Oh gosh, listen to this," and everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's really good," and then everybody panics and gets scared. And in reality, there's a lot of technical things on the back end. And this is just from my own education from interviewing so many people that worked in the AI industry, that there's many, many different ways that people come out with these samples, and you don't know how much engineering is done on the back end to make them sound that good. And there's different technologies too. I mean, there's text to speech, and then there's speech to speech, which is an entirely different thing, which is what they use for high end, Hollywood movie dubs, and that's where it sounds scary good. And so a lot of times you don't know how it was produced or how it was manufactured. But kudos to Nava again, and the sooner we can get legislation in place so that we can be protected, the better. And I've always said that we should, as an industry, just evolve. I mean, we're not going to make it go away. That's for darn sure. So we need to evolve and somehow work with it as it evolves as well. But I don't think anymore that AI's high power is in synthetic voices anymore. I really feel that it's in data manipulation and data curation. And that's where its true, strength is. I think, in terms of helping the world, and hopefully in a good way.
And I think there's also, in my mind, there's a difference between like the synthetic voices, which are just like, sprinkling stuff into a blender and creating a new voice, versus a real person who owns their clone and they're in charge of their clone. I feel like, that to me feels like the
and to me I feel like that's like
situation.
money wise, and to me money wise I feel like it's an equal split, right? I feel like I should get 50%, and the company that has my voice and generates my voice and hosts my voice, right, with their engine, should get 50%. That's where I start. in terms of why not, right?
If you need a pickup and you're like, I'm sleeping, I'm on vacation, I'm in charge, I'm going to push the button I'll get you that pickup, but I'm just going to set it from my phone right here, or like you're in charge of that locker or whatever it is. So, yeah.
Well, what other predictions? So I guess I'll say, if you took a look into the crystal ball, outside of synthetic voices, what sort of predictions do you have for the future, at least for yourself and audio production and advertising?
I mean, I'm seeing, and this is what I'm enjoying a lot more in my day-to-day is more immersive sound design in audio advertising. We are starting to do some cool stuff in the 3D space where we're able to take and I'm now the go-to guy. Well, I'd like to think I'm now the go-to guy on my team for horror movie trailers or all things horror, because I just did something the other day. It was really cool for this horror movie coming up, and I just enjoyed taking an alien and going, but in the headphones where it comes from the top of the head to the bottom, or you can go around, in that 3D space in headphones, which is really cool. So anytime I could do that, where you're just getting more theater of the mind stuff to actually immerse a listener, and just have the VO be a support to that. I think
awesome.
If we can get more into those kind of things, almost cinematic, ads in your headphones, I think that might be the way to really enjoy and get people to enjoy ads too, and just really just be like, whoa, did you hear that? Imagine people talking about, did you hear that audio ad? Like when they're in the same way people are talking about Super Bowl ads. It's like, I'd love to get there.
Yeah, audio ads like that. One other thing I want before I have to leave you, and we could probably do 5 podcasts with all this really great conversation. Tell us a little bit about, you started something called the Sonic Diversity Initiatives. Tell us a little bit about that. I think
sure. This is like something we started during the pandemic. It's called Stand for Sonic Diversity, and is a website we created called standforsonicdiversity.com, and basically we just started to take a look at our casting practices and other advertising agencies, and we kind of put out almost like a pledge to other advertising agencies. Hey, will you guys pledge along with us to make your casting and your rosters more diverse and more inclusive? And as a result, I've worked really hard, and I'm proud to say that our roster is now more than 50% voices of color. So I'm really proud of that work. And we're trying to also make sure that our casting practices are that way, because
yes, absolutely.
Back then, it was like, you were just like, unless a client specified, you would maybe assume like, if they don't specify, then they want a white talent, as their go-to. And it's like, no. So we decided we can move the needle from within, by just making these changes internally and, smartly, and it's the right thing to do. And so we also put this pledge out to other agencies and other advertising conglomerates and stuff like that. And hopefully they all join in as well. So.
Wonderful.
Well, if you go to that site, if you go to the site, there's a really cool audio spot that you can play there, and I'm proud to produce that spot as well.
What's that site again?
standforsonicdiversity.com.
Okay, awesome. So, all right, my last question, which is, here's a fun question for you. If you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only bring 3 albums or podcasts with you, what would they be?
Ooh.
I mean, I figure you must have some music preferences.
Yes, I have. Yeah. Oh, man.
Only 3.
Wow. All right. One of them is Prince. It's oh God.
Of course, I say 1999, but
no, not. It's a double album. Why am I not thinking of it right now?
Well, just saying Prince is enough for me. I would absolutely.
It's
I like
the one
that.
It's the one with Housequake and Starfish and Coffee. I don't know why the name is escaping me. It's one of my favorite albums.
He's
too.
Brilliant. He's brilliant.
Yes, and then I'm also a metalhead, and I like kind of like heavy hardcore music. And there's a band.
Why did I know that? Why did I know that?
Yeah,
somehow?
I play in 2 bands actually. So
Oh, okay.
that's my
That's
weekend
awesome.
therapy is going and playing super loud music, and
There you go. And what do you play? If I can
play
ask?
bass.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
My brother plays bass.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Can we hear you anywhere? Is that a thing? Like, can we
Uh
hear
huh.
you somewhere?
I'm in a band. It's an all dad band, and this is the best name for an all dad band. It's called That Ship Has Sailed.
I love it. I love it.
We're on all the all the streaming places, and
That's
I'm in
great.
another band called Low Cross, and that's on Bandcamp as well. But
Awesome.
the other album I would say is by this band from Boston. I really like they're called Converge, and their
Okay.
album is called Jane Doe.
Okay.
And then one more. Oh God.
It could be a podcast too, if you have a favorite podcast.
Yeah.
Because you got to keep yourself busy.
Right.
So maybe the podcast would be more refreshing, because it would come out, on a regular basis.
There was one podcast I listened to by a coworker introduced it to me, and it's not something I can listen to over again because it was pretty intense, but it was really cool. It was called Sweet Bobby, I think.
Okay.
It was like a kind of a true crime kind of podcast.
Oh, yeah,
so.
yeah. I think that
I wouldn't take that with me,
favorites,
though. I'm
too.
sorry. You put me on the spot. But
That's okay. That's all right. I think
Yeah.
you did really well.
Thank
I think
you.
did really well. So let me ask you, if I'm really excited, by the way, that before I let you go, that I'm going to have you as a guest director for my VO Peeps group, which is going to be really amazing coming
Looking
up in
forward to
July.
it.
So thank you. Very excited to have that happen. If Voice Talent want to reach out and, I don't know, find you, see all good things that you do, listen to your band, and also the other website that we mentioned, where can they find you?
you can probably hit me on LinkedIn, or
Okay.
my email address is spogach@pandora.com. It might
Look
change
at
to
that.
SiriusXM shortly, but one thing I like to tell talents, and I guess I'm overly nice this way, is like I'm always happy to lend talents their ears. Like for example, if someone sends an audition out, or they want to know, oh, why didn't I get that audition? I'm happy to give feedback on there. It's like almost like I liken it to like you're all sending resumes out into the world. You don't hear anything back. It's
I
like
know.
you're sending
It's
you're
tough.
sending auditions out, and no one ever gets feedback. So I'm always happy to lend an ear and give feedback, or someone's like, oh, can you listen to my demo? And if I have time, I'm glad to take a minute and listen to someone's demo, give them feedback and stuff like
That's
that.
wonderful.
I guess I'm too nice. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to be, now I'm going to, now I'm going to send everybody your way out.
I know. By the way, I'm changing my email address. No,
There you go. Yeah, right? Well, Steve, it has been so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to give a great big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL. Yes, you too can connect and network like bosses. Find out more at IPDTL.com. Steve, thank you again. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Can't wait
It was
to
great
see
talking to you. Yeah.
for VO Peeps. And bosses, you have an amazing week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.